I remember, like yesterday, Dr. Strempel's lectures. Robert Strempel taught systematic theology at Westminster, California. And when we got to the topic of the image of God, he made an allusion to the lectures of John Murray on the image of God. And he said that Murray, as he introduced the material on image, said that, gentlemen, there is a world of theology contained here. And so they opened up and looked at the various conceptions of the image of God in the history of the Reformed tradition in Socinian, Arminian, Roman Catholic, Lutheran traditions. And to turn that here, to turn that to its application here, we can say there is just a world of theology contained in these 2 pages. In Voss's terms, this should be embedded in the minds of our listeners. There is here a sphere full of anthropomorphism,
Hmm.
because we're going to discuss the emotional or affectional disposition of God in relation to either his people who love him and are in covenant relation to him, or his enemies who do not love him and are under his wrath and curse. So he gives us a principle by which we need to address so-called emotions or affections in God. And on the top of page 255, that first main paragraph, I'm going to just summarize highlights of it here. He says that as a guiding principle, whenever we talk about the emotional, affectional, or dispositional aspect of God in relation to creatures, he says, quote, "We are here in a sphere full of anthropomorphism." And he says that an anthropomorphism is never without an inner core of important truth that must be translated into more theological language where we can enrich our knowledge of God. And so the question that arises for our listeners and for the readers is simply this: what is anthropomorphism? What is anthropomorphic language? And before we get into uh, the more sophisticated side and the depth dimension of what we're studying, let me just put it this way. Anthropomorphic language ascribes the qualities of the creature to God in his acts that fall in time. Anthropomorphic language, put a different way, speaks of God or renders or depicts God's actions toward his creation in language and concepts borrowed from the creature. But the key, and this is when Voss says we are in a sphere full of anthropomorphism, and we must translate that theological language to enrich our doctrine of God. Here's the key. That language, whether it is Augustine, Calvin, Westminster Standards, Bavinck, Voss, Van Til, you name it, that anthropomorphic language is never intended to be taken in a univocal way as though God actually literally possesses creaturely qualities. So that frames this entire discussion of emotions and affections. And we might say that we are, to use that language there, we're here in a sphere full of anthropomorphism, and it's so easy to make rudimentary mistakes when you speak about emotions and affections or God's disposition toward his creatures in time. And so Voss is reminding us here that we're going to use anthropomorphic language that renders God's actions toward the creature in language and concepts borrowed from the creature, but we're doing it in such a way that we deny he literally possesses creaturely qualities, hence
Hmm.
the mystery.